when I first started doing stand-up comedy, I had very little help. Um, there were not too many comics that helped me, and I remember telling myself, I go, if I ever make it in this industry, I'm gonna always help people. And I give lots of advice. I get calls from a lot of comics. Hey, Joey, this I want to do the show here or this or that. I'm going here, or what do you recommend for this or for that? And I gladly sit there and and give them any advice I could help them with. And I always tell them, I go, even if it's about their act, I go, look, this is just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. I go, but in my opinion, from my experience, this and that.
Joey Medina is the Bronx-born boxer turned comedian, filmmaker, and radio host, and his journey from sleeping in his car to performing on stages around the world is nothing short of inspiring. Before comedy, he was the Arizona lightweight boxing champion, and then he went from punches to punchlines, joining the original Latin kings of comedy alongside George Lopez, Paul Rodriguez, and Cheech Marin, and starring in his own Showtime special, Taking Off the Gloves. Joey is performing along with Lisa Alvarado, the Latin queen of comedy, in the first in a monthly series of comedy shows in Chinita's venue in Henderson beginning August 30th at 7 and 9:15. The show is hosted by comedian Matt Plant, direct from Alaska and now making Las Vegas his home. For ticket information, go to hooked-entertainment.com. That's hooked-entertainment.com. And for everything about Joey Medina, go to joeymedina.com and you can follow him on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And Joey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, pleasure. So you're in the ring, you're punching and doing all kinds of stuff, and all of a sudden you realize that your opponent is falling down not from your punches but from laughing, and that's how you start your comedy career. Is that true? Yes or no?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, uh, Definitely comedy has or boxing has really prepared me for comedy. It's mentally it's the same thing, and there've been plenty of times where I first got on the stage and I was hoping someone could throw in the towel because I was bombing and it was just I'm like this is pain. It's more painful than getting punched in the face.
Well, when you started the road to comedy, were you doing both at some point at the same time and then transition totally to comedy?
Yeah, at the very, very end of my boxing career, I started doing open mics. So that was fun.
Well, when you
And that was the only time in my comedy career that I was in shape.
Interesting. When did you know you were funny? Was it before pre-boxing, I should say, or during
Yeah,
boxing?
I think as a kid I was very funny. I was just very shy though. So I could only be funny around my friends. Once someone came in from outside the group, I kept my mouth shut. I was too shy to try to be funny.
But then well, you clearly knew that you had a sense of humor, but as you mentioned, you were shy. Now you're in the boxing world, which requires non-shyness and
Yeah, yeah.
violence in that sense. So you're boxing. Did it give you some level of satisfaction to be boxing before you even thought of comedy, but to be boxing, and it gave you a release from just growing up in the Bronx, or what was the rationale for you to go into boxing?
Well, boxing, it was something I've always been fascinated ever since I was a little kid and I watched Rocky for the first time, which, by the way, is my favorite movie of all time. And, but, I didn't realize it while it was happening, but I realized it after. Boxing was like my father. I grew up without a father, and my mom was working several jobs. I was kind of on my own, a latchkey kid, and going to the gym every day was I was being raised by that. So it kept me out of drugs, it kept me out of gangs, it kept me out of bad things, and kept me on the right track. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I'm the kind of person that when I'm into something, I put everything into it. And growing up as a kid, I definitely did that with boxing, which, helped raise me.
It also gave you a release, didn't it, from frustration?
Oh yeah, it feels good when you punch somebody, and um,
Legally, right?
yeah, legally, of course, legally. No, it's fun and it's you learn a lot and the good thing about boxers is they don't have to prove anything. They don't have to be tough guys. So I never really got into fights. I defended myself a few times growing up, but I never got into a fight, that I tried. Boxers aren't bullies. Boxers are the opposite, actually. They're protectors. So yeah, but it felt good. When you grow up poor, you don't know you're growing up poor. You just think that's life. That's how everybody lives, right? Um, you know, e you know, eating three meals a day, that's stuff that happens in the movies. It's like, or in prison.
Or
But yeah, but I love boxing. Boxing is always it's been my uh first love in many ways. Um, and I just wish I was back in shape, but it's hard when you're older.
it is. You can still do it, Joey. Come on, you can still do it. You
Yeah,
get up
well,
and do
well,
it.
we'll see.
Okay. So before, and I know you've done all kinds of stuff. I mentioned in my opening about your radio career in LA and also just your writing, etc. But when you made a decision to go into comedy full time, how did you, I don't know what the word would be, but how did you make it happen for yourself? Maybe that's the way to pose it to you. In other words, you can't just segue. Nobody segues from boxing to comedy normally or naturally. There has to be some sort of, if not a plan, somebody saw you and said, you know what? We're going to work with you and you're going to become a comedian, or you just had the will to do it and you just kept working at it.
It had more to do with the will. What happened really was I I hit a very low point in my life. You mentioned earlier about living in a car. This was during that time,
Mhm.
and I remember the comedy club where I lived, and that's where I did open mic a couple years before. And I figured, listen, they'll let me in because they remember me from open mic because I had no money and I needed to cheer up. I was really depressed. Um, so I went to the gym just to cheer up. I stood in the back because I wasn't a paying customer, so I had to stand in the back. And I watched the comedian making everyone's laugh. I enjoyed myself. And it just hit me at that moment. I go, wait a second. I have nothing to lose. I can start my life all over again. I
Mhm.
can do whatever I want. And it became like a liberating feeling instead of a depressing feeling. And at that very moment, I decided I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that comedian that's on that stage, and that's all I focused on. And 100 years later, here I am.
Well, you also have something unusual for a boxer. You have a certain natural charm about you, which not all boxers have, and not all comedians have, actually, frankly.
Well, listen, Mike Tyson's not here to defend himself, so
Yeah, okay.
I'm just kidding.
But you also have, okay, there's a key. I mentioned charm, but I think there's a better word, and it applies to comedians in particular. That is likability. People have to like a performer, and
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
80% of the way there. And then, yeah, if your jokes are not as funny as other comedians, but if they like you, they're going to go with it. And so
Yeah.
you have this natural likability. Where did that come from, and where was that again in growing up, or was that developed later in life? Because you hit the a low point with sleeping in cars. In fact, do you still have that car?
No, hell.
Okay. I thought maybe you'd keep it as a memento of that time, and just remind
Yeah.
you, keep you humble, Joey. Have that car sitting in the
Well, my
garage of
my
your
car
mansion.
payments keep me humble.
Yeah, but you could have kept it in your $4 million mansion, instead.
I wish.
Yeah, okay, maybe not.
No,
Where did that come from?
I think it's uh kind of a survival technique, possibly. I think I've been this way my whole life. And I think people just, we all have a core, right? Some our cores are a person's personality is a person's personality. Now, it does develop and it does grow. You you gain other you gain other skills, you gain other things. But I think as human beings, we have a core, right? Some people are really good people. Some people are really Donald Trump. So there's it
Oh, you're
just
being
depends.
political now. Okay.
It's just it's just some people are who they are, right? Um, but I remember adults calling me humble, and I remember that because I didn't know what the word was. And I remember them saying, you're very humble, and I'm like, oh, okay, but I I knew it was something nice, but I didn't know what it was until one day I learned what it was. And so I think that it came from that. And now, but I'm like any other human being. I'm flawed like every other human being. There's days I have bad days. There's days where if you took a snapshot of me on that day or in that situation, you think, oh my God, this guy is horrible, right? Um, but generally speaking, I'm not that. That was just a piece of my life at the time, or whatever it was. So I try to be a good person. I try to follow my heart, and most of the time that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Kind of just take it from there.
I have a two-page printout of all your bad faults, which I'm not
Oh
going to
God,
today.
two,
So
only two?
yeah,
Did
only
you
two.
run out of ink?
Oh, single space and my side. So I wanted to get it on as least paper as I could, use in that sense. I find it's funny your voice or your accent is an interesting mix to me because I know you came from the Bronx, but there's an East LA aspect of it in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
voice.
Well, it's funny because on the West Coast, people think I sound like I'm from the East Coast, and my friends and family on the East Coast think I sound like I come from the West Coast. So yeah, it's the more I drink though, the more New Yorker I sound. So,
No, I get it. I get it.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
was your mom able to see your rise in comedy?
Oh yeah.
Good. She's been to shows and everything.
Yes, my mom's been to Vegas with me. She's, seen me perform in Vegas. Um, my sister, my family. So that's, so I'm really happy with that. And it's funny because people they're like, man, we never thought you would do something like this. And here I am.
Yeah, despite your ugliness, it seemed to
I
work.
know.
Yeah.
Who knew?
I want to talk about your show coming up in a moment at Chinita's, but just before we get into that, you have a radio background too, which I mentioned in LA, and you've got also films. So how did you end up expanding your talents in those areas? In other words, I know we talked about going from boxing to comedy and how that started for you, but you clearly didn't limit yourself to just the stand-up comedy.
Right. Now, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this. Film came first. Film came when I was in fifth grade. I had a teacher named Morris Chernow who I put in my credits now every film I make.
Mhm.
Um, he played a Super 8 film in our class. It was a silent film 'cause back then. The film was only like 3 minutes and 10 seconds long, and it was kind of like a little Batman parody he did with the class before. And I remember watching it, and my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my, I didn't know you can do that. The only time I ever seen something on a screen was either television or a movie. I never knew you can do it yourself, right? So I just watched that in awe, and I remember wanting to do that. I didn't know it was called filmmaking. I didn't know it was called directing, but I remember wanting to do that. And I remember watching plays or sketches and wanting to write like that and do that. And I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know, but it's when I'm in seventh grade, in junior high school, I I bought a projector, a camera, and a screen that all said the Board of Education on it from one of my teachers
So you got it
for
at a discount.
$50. And so I shot my first film ever in
Oh, well,
seventh grade.
wait a second, Joey. I'm very proud of you that you didn't steal the projector and the camera. You
No, no, no.
bought it.
They were stolen, but I didn't steal them. I
You bought
just
a
bought them.
second. All right, now I get it. Okay. So you got the camera, the projector, and what was the other thing?
And
You
a
got
screen.
and a
Yeah,
screen. Okay.
yeah.
And you
50
started,
bucks was a great deal.
yeah, I'm sure it was. Out of the
Yeah.
trunk of the car that you used to sleep in. Okay, I
Oh,
see.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
actually, no, no. It's my teacher, my homeroom teacher, sold it to me.
oh, excellent. Okay, so we're legit. All right. I always knew
Yeah,
you were capable of that, Joey.
yeah. He stole it, not me. So,
A
um,
teacher. Oh no. So you start monkeying around with making films.
yeah, and that was always something I always loved. It was my first love, even though boxing was my first love as well, because I loved boxing when I was little, but I didn't start boxing until after I made that first movie. Um, and then, but filmmaking is a very expensive hobby if you're going to use it as a hobby. So, I didn't, I stayed away from it until after I graduated high school. I went to television production school. And there I learned how to produce television. I learned more about directing and filmmaking. And then I turned professional right after that. So the whole filmmaking thing went to the side. And then I got into comedy. And then when I got into the radio again, we had a contest where we had a local band. We called it Mexican Idol or something like that, right? And it was a local band. They would play at a big concert we were hosting at the Staples Center. And I had money back then, and I was like, you know what? As an extra incentive, I'll produce their music video for them, and I'll fund it myself. So I did that, and I loved the feeling of directing again, and then I just slowly started buying equipment and doing little projects here and there, and before you know it, well, even actually before that, I directed a full movie. Like it was, my life is all over the place. So it's I have ADHD, so yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, right. So do you still have the original projector and screen and camera?
You know what? My mom may have it somewhere. I really want to find that film because it was a King Kong parody that I made, and it was really cute. And it was funny because it was horrible, but
Oh, yeah, it's a little
yeah,
campy.
yeah,
So
but
that's
um, but yeah, but I love, and the good thing, like anything else, you learn. The more you do it, the better you get. I've my projects that I've made so far have won probably close or more than 250 film festival awards.
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud of all of them.
Should be. Are you
Yeah.
working on a current project? And we're going to talk in a moment about your upcoming
Well,
performance.
there's the last project I did, which I'm kind of still working on it in some respects, is I did a film called Roxy the Man with comedian Paul Rodriguez. And it's a beautiful film. It's about a Vietnam veteran who's diagnosed with cancer and adopts an abused dog that nobody wanted, and they both change each other's life. And it's a really touching story, and it's beautiful, and it's got a little humor in it because we got Paul Rodriguez in there, and I kind of wrote it specifically for him.
Right.
And right now it's we have it submitted in some big festivals, and we're hoping to get chosen.
So when you're going to be opening, as I mentioned earlier, with Lisa Alvarado, and this is going to be the first in a monthly series of comedy shows. It's called Chinita's Venue. It's in Henderson on Water Street, beginning October 30th at
Hmm.
9:15. And you're working with Matt, and Matt is a comedian out of Alaska who's
Hmm.
now planting himself. Get that? How I did that? Planting himself in.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my terrible.
And I get
All right,
it.
thank you. It's early, but we're doing it. Okay, so he's planting himself here in Las Vegas on Henderson. And have you structured the show yet? Do you know what you're going to be doing on stage?
There's you know, I go to the stage the same way I go into a ring. I kind of know my opponent, and I have a plan, but I'm very flexible. So I may go on stage and the energy may be not what I expected, and I just can't continue. So I never have a script. I go there and I kind of just not wing it, but I stayed loose enough to know that I can change my momentum if I need to.
Hmm.
But
Well,
it's all going to be funny stuff.
yeah, oh, it's got to be. But Matt told
Yeah.
me he's got a practical joke he's going to play on you. He's actually
Oh,
he's hired a group of people who can't hear. They're going to be coming tuning in. So if you can work on sign language now, I think it really would help the
yeah.
act.
They're called cruise ship passengers. Yeah, that's what they are.
Well, they're busy
And,
drinking on.
and Matt Plant is an extremely very funny comedian as well. But more importantly, he's one hell of a guy. We were talking about character earlier, and one of the reasons why I love Matt so much is he's got amazing character, and if you meet his mother and his family, you'll know why. It's a loving family. I met him in Alaska. Well, actually, I actually met him in Los Angeles, and then we did a tour in Alaska, which is beautiful, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And he's a great guy. So anytime I get to do anything with him or anyone that else that I like the other promoter, Kevin, they're just good people. I want to work with them and I want to hang out with them.
Yeah, it's not always the case that you can work with a great person in show
Right.
business. I mean, you have to deal with all kinds of people in that
Right.
sense. And then also starring with you is Lisa Alvarado, known as the Latin Queen of Comedy. Have you worked with Lisa before?
Yeah, I've worked with her uh, for years. Um, First time I met her was in Chicago, and she opened for me there, and she killed it. She was hilarious. Um, we did a college, I think, of Florida once, where we had to share a hotel room, and I'm proud to say she doesn't snore.
Have you thought about working with her on an unusual part of it? And that is both of you kind of would box each other. What do you think? On
Pardon
stage.
me? Can you repeat that?
I say, what do you think if you two got the two of you got together in addition to doing comedy, the two of you got on stage and boxed?
Oh, in box, she'd probably win.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's
Actually.
hard.
But she
It's hard.
doesn't
It's hard to.
snore,
It's
so she probably boxes well.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
hard to beat a Hispanic woman.
Gee.
Yeah, that's like a whole new episode on cops.
Okay, folks, not politically correct, but it's fine. It's very good. It's funny. Speaking of that, too, I know in an interview you did, you were talking about working clean versus working blue or dirty, whatever you want to call it. But uh, you're flexible in that clearly you can work clean and work anywhere, corporate gigs and cruise ships and even if they're not listening to you on the cruise ship, at least you're
Right,
working
right.
clean. But if you need to, you can add it in here and there. Does that advice still stand for aspiring comedians that, start by working clean and you can always muddy it up a
Yeah,
little bit down the road?
yeah. As a matter of fact, Gabriel Iglesias has said in many interviews the best advice he ever got was from Joey Medina, and that was the exact advice that I gave him. I said, "Work clean. You can always add other stuff." Now, you know, as a good comedian on stage is basically doing himself or doing herself, right? But it's a hyper version. It's where we're on. It would be the equivalent of hosting a party at your house. You're still you, but you're a little more up. You got more
Yeah, you're
energy and
ebullient and
you're
you can
peppy.
be
Yeah,
more dynamic and yeah,
and
it's
that's
more.
kind of what we have to do on stage. So I mean, I curse like a sailor normally, So
I've heard
on
the
stage,
recordings, yes.
yes, on stage, I feel comfortable. But then, sometimes I'll watch a video. I'm like, I could have not said it there. I could have said. So the important thing is for any comedian is to read the crowd, read the room.
And that's what you're going to be doing on October the 30th.
Absolutely,
7
absolutely.
and 9:15. You're doing two shows, 7 and 9:15. How does that work for you in between shows? Do you retreat to the green room and eat gummies or drink water or take a snooze or take a walk or
No,
what do you do?
I kind of relax. I kind of think on the last set, go, okay, what worked, what didn't work, um, what did I forget to do, not do, and I'm like, oh, I forgot this joke. I want to do it. I want to make sure I do it the next one. Um, if you know, I'll remember if the comics in front of me how their set was, right? So, because sometimes that dictates my energy. So if I have a comic in front of me and this is not going to happen on this show, but who doesn't do well, I have more work to do. I have to repair kind of what that person did. But if a comic was killing it and having a great show like this one will have, right? Then it's going to be a little easier. Then I kind of just ride the wave and I just go with it.
So you're balancing the performances of the two of you in most situations. So whoever the comedian is, if they're really high energy, you're going to not necessarily go as much, or if they're not doing as well, you're going to ramp it up on your end just to make it work.
Yeah. So,
So
it's
the
that kind
audience
of,
feels that there's a balance of energy. Maybe that's the way to phrase it.
yeah. And every once in a while, if I think I need to, I'll throw a little bit of advice to the comedians in front of me to
Mhm.
say, hey, listen, that you were off on this, or they can't do this. Don't talk about this, or for instance, if there's a some comics, if there's a light crowd, let's say, and the place is not full and it's obvious, they make fun of the crowd, and I'm like, that's the worst thing you can do because they are the ones that showed up.
Exactly. Yes,
So
common sense. Hello.
why are you punishing them for. I mean, it's okay to
Acknowledge the fact that there's
acknowledge
a
it
crowd.
because we're
Right.
not blind,
Right.
but you never ever punish the audience for showing up to the show. That's just doesn't even, it's
Yeah,
not
they're
even.
paying to be there. The other ones are not there. Go and yell at them later if you can find
Yeah,
them.
call them special. Call them, hey man, you guys came for the you guys are the best crowd.
Exactly
Whatever.
right.
Just and just make them feel happy to be there.
Do you find that because you've been at it quite a while now and have performed all over the world, do you find that the you're becoming a mentor in a way, an informal mentor, and then when you talk to comedians who perform with you and give them advice, do they get defensive at all, or do they understand where you're coming from with your experience?
Well, I never ever give people any kind of criticism or advice without them asking. I learned that a long time ago, especially with comics, because comics have an ego. But when I first started doing stand-up comedy, I had very little help. Um, there were not too many comics that helped me, and I remember telling myself, I go, if I ever make it in this industry, I'm gonna always help people. And I give lots of advice. I get calls from a lot of comics. Hey Joey, this I want to do the show here or this or that. I'm going here or what do you recommend for this or for that? And I gladly sit there and and give them any advice I could help them with. And I always tell them, I go, even if it's about their act, I go, look, this is just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. I go, but in my opinion, from my experience, this and that.
Speaking of that, because I think I could see you as a mentor to people, but they have to ask first for advice and suggestions. Was there someone that you looked up to when you first decided to get into the comedy world that you not that you mimicked their style, but you were inspired by them and realized that this was something you wanted to do? I know earlier you talked about how you knew you were funny and you were shy around people that weren't in your inner circle, and then you eventually broke out of that. But was there someone in particular that you looked up to in terms of inspiration or timing or rhythm, any of that?
Well, the first people I admired and loved were, all the big comics, right? Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor. But locally, when I started doing open mic, there was a comic who started before me, and maybe he had like a year or two before me, named Pablo Francisco. And Pablo was extremely, extremely funny and still is. I just did a show with him. My last show I just did with Pablo. And I he was like the funniest person I ever met in real life. And it was just that inspired me a lot. I wanted to be that funny. I knew our energies were different and everything, and there is no one else like him in this world. And if you don't know who he is, then you're living under a rock. He's one of the funniest people ever. But yeah, that inspired me. It inspired me in the sense that it's I could do it. So, if somebody else did it, then I always had that concept in my mind. If someone else did it, I can do
Yeah, no, that's
it.
great. That's absolutely
Yeah.
great. Before I let you go, last question. Is it what's your you have a current project coming up that you're working on, whether it's a film or a play or
Well, my last script I wrote is called Say Her Name, and it's about uh, a 9-year-old little black girl that gets shot by accident by a police officer. So it's I love dramas.
oh, I
That's
was gonna
my
say that's a
favorite
great
thing.
comedy. Oh yeah, that'll work out fine. Well, we'll look forward. They can go to joeymedina.com to get all the information of your upcoming projects as well.
Yes, and Instagram. Instagram is my social media of choice,
Right.
and it's Joey Medina Comic. So go on there, follow, and you could see a lot of my projects and stuff as well.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. My guest has been Joey Medina. He's performing along with Lisa Alvarado, the Latin Queen of Comedy, in the first in a monthly series of comedy shows in Chinita's venue, which is in Henderson on Water Street, beginning October 30th. Two shows, 7 and 9:15. For ticket information, go to hooked-entertainment.com. That's hooked-entertainment.com. We mentioned about Joey Medina's website, but also obviously Instagram, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And Joey, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really had a great time.
Same here. See you next time.